Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's OR Today webinar. We have a great presentation for you featuring Phyllis Quinlan as she raises awareness of the impact of disruptive behavior in the workplace. She will also offer important assessment tools for distinguishing between someone who is a bully versus someone who is chronically uncivil and offer unique approaches offers unique approaches to and management of each. OR Today would like to thank our sponsor, MFW Consultants to Professionals. Dr. Phyllis Quinlan collaborates with individuals and organizations to meet a wide variety of leadership development, team building, and training needs. These include, but are not limited to, leadership development programs, COVID experience recovery, competency-based orientation development, cross-training programs, policy and procedure development, transformational leadership gap analysis, and risk management. Phyllis is committed to working with organizational leaders in the creation of healthy work environments and in effectively assessing and managing bullying and incivility in the workplace. Please visit mfwconsultants.com for more information. We'd like to offer a free subscription to OR Today magazine to each attendee today. For nearly 20 years, OR Today has provided perioperative and SPD professionals with up-to-date news and information about their profession. Our monthly magazine aims to educate readers about new guidelines, techniques, and equipment, as well as practical information for career building, problem solving, and overall well-being. To get your free subscription to our magazine, please visit ortoday.com/subscribe. Today's webinar is eligible for one continuing education hour by the State of California Board of Registered Nursing. You can obtain your certificate by completing today's post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your one continuing education hour, and you'll be able to download the certificate as soon as the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. If you have questions for our speaker today, please submit them via the questions feature on the GoToWebinar dashboard. We'll get to as many questions as we can at the end of today's webinar. As I mentioned earlier, our speaker today is Phyllis Quinlan. Phyllis, you may begin whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you to OR Today for providing me with this forum to discuss such an important issue in the workplace today. So one of the unfortunate realities that we are all struggling with is this sense of chronic incivility, not just growing in the workplace, but really something that we are dealing with coast to coast. And it's a huge concern to many, but it is particularly of deep concern to those of us who are working in healthcare, because we know that the issues of disruptive behavior are so very, very distracting that it's not just causing increased stress in the professional caregiver, it's increasing the risk for all sorts of errors in the workplace that unfortunately then would affect patients. So here are some of the rules that you absolutely have to embrace if you're going to effectively deal with bullying and incivility, and stay safe yourself while you're doing it. Rule number 1, you never, ever have a program in place that you are going to conduct on your own to address the issues of disruptive behavior, whether it is chronic incivility or bullying. You always, always, always engage your top leadership, administration, and human resources. There are guidelines that need to be followed. There are collective bargaining agreements that need to be followed. There are human resource laws that need to be followed. And as I start to explain more about the personality of a bully, you'll start to realize how easy it is for someone who is a bully to confuse and confound the situation and turn everything around in such a way that it appears to many that you are the bully, they are the victim, which of course then could really, really affect your career. So let's first start with what's not bullying. Okay, and we have the Joint Commission here to help us with that. In 2016, they were very clear to make sure that everybody understood that illegal harassment and discrimination is not a form of bullying, it's a crime. So that needs to get escalated to Human Resources right away because that comes under all of our United States laws. Okay, so, but what they did give us was a guideline for what bullying is not. Number one, bullying is not setting high work performance standards. It's not implementing organizational change or restrictions that may or may not affect someone's status or job in the organization. The organization has to come first, especially if it's making these changes on behalf of patients. You know, bullying is not having a difference of opinion. We have to get to a place where we agree to disagree and respectfully walk away. It's not allocating work in a transparent manner or transferring a member for legitimate reasons when those reasons have been thoroughly explained. It's not selecting a staff member for a job or a promotion after thoroughly vetting everyone who applied. And it's not providing constructive criticism about behavior or work performance. That is part and parcel of the responsibilities of direct reports, assistant managers, and of course, department heads. There are various types of workplace violence. We are going to be discussing type 3, that as it is described by the National Institute for Occupational Safety. And type 3 talks about violence of worker towards worker. So I really, first of all, want to talk about, you know, how long we've ignored this issue. Bullying and chronic incivility in the workplace, unfortunately, has been around for at least the 44 years I've been practicing, and I'm sure it was around long before that. Years ago, I had an opportunity to do a 10-city tour with AORN, the American Association of Perioperative Nurses, and in the discussion with perioperative leaders coast to coast, we talked about the disruptive behaviors. And what we came up with is a decision that essentially 85% of our workers come to work every day, ready, willing, and able to do world-class care and work in a collegial manner. And then there's the other 10 to 15%. Of those 10 to 15%, 2/3 will engage in chronic incivility. And we'll talk about what that looks like in a minute. Fortunately, only 3 to 5% of the staff really engages in behavior that we would call bullying. That's a fortunate thing because of the low number, but I think we know it only takes one person to be a bully or one person on each shift to be a bully to really start to destroy the culture of a particular unit. So we have a lot of evidence there to show the impact of toxic people on patient safety. And this is really the number one reason why you want to commit yourself to addressing bullying and incivility in the workplace. 70 to 80% of medical professions share that they have made an error because of the distraction of the disruptive behavior. 51% of nurses report errors from physician abuse. You know, they got distracted, something else happened, and of course an error was made. 65% of nurses are reporting lateral abuse, nurse to nurse. 77 talk about vertical abuse, meaning physician to nurse, and the numbers just go on. So clearly it is time to address this. I want to get our terms straight because there is a difference, and there is a methodology to working with someone who is chronically uncivil versus someone who is engaging in bullying behavior. So first, let's talk about what does chronic incivility look like. So someone who's engaging in chronic incivility is irritating, they're immature, their disruptive behavior does not leave anyone around them feeling threatened, humiliated, or vulnerable. They are just the nuisance person on the unit. They're chronically late for work, they can't get their reports in on time, they don't get back to relieving others on time, there's poor boundaries about life and challenges. It's always the latest drama of, about what's going on in their personal life. They are chronic complainers. It's the old story of what a beautiful day today is. Yeah, but tomorrow it's supposed to be raining. I mean, they just can never see a silver lining to anything. They're inappropriate with their body language at meetings and huddles. The the list goes on, but essentially what it boils down to is these folks who engage in chronically uncivil behavior have very low emotional intelligence. They are unaware of how they behave, or if they are aware of how they behave, they don't have the personal courage to engage in anything that would help them self-manage better. And their influence on groups is really, it just, for lack of a better term, drains all the energy out of the room. So what we do know is that there has been work done on what happens with behavior, and what we know now is that uncivil behavior is contagious. So that if you are a leader and you are one of those leaders or out there that choose to ignore or hope people can take care of these situations on their own, I don't want to get involved, let people, talk to one another and clear this up, what you're essentially doing, whether you realize it or not, is putting a stamp of approval, overtly or covertly, on this behavior. And what you are going to have is that chronic incivility is going to become normalized on your unit. And that is a catastrophe. So I want to create awareness now about insights into the personality of a bully. What's different from someone who engages in chronic incivility? Number one, bullying is persistent. So when we talk about the behavior of a bully, we're going to be talking about a behavior that has a pattern to it, and it is almost predictable. In other words, if something goes wrong, you can almost predict this person is going to act out in their particular disruptive behavior manner. A bully, again, has a patterned behavior of offensive, abusive, intimidating, or insulting behaviors or unfair actions directed at an individual. And that causes this individual to feel threatened, abused, humiliated, and vulnerable when they're at work. And that is absolutely, totally unacceptable. So we know that bullying is a shadow behavior, meaning that very rarely is there, unless you are in a position of power and you have decided or determined that you are untouchable because of your position of power, that, rarely will a bully then overtly or in the light of day do their destructive business. They usually do it in the corners, in the lounges, when somebody's one-on-one, because they want to be able to set up a sense of plausible deniability around their behavior. In other words, their behavior is real, but they want to keep making you feel powerless. They want to give you a sense of powerless, that regardless of however you escalate this behavior, they're doing it in such a way that they can honestly say, oh, that you just misunderstood me. You need to grow a thicker skin. Oh my God, I was only, trying to be funny. You just, this is all you and it's not me. Again, shadowy types of behavior. Bullies will count on the silences of witnesses, so that the last thing someone else wants in the unit is to be the focus of a bully. And in order to make sure that they don't become the focus of the bully, they silence themselves and turn a blind eye to the situation of perhaps another colleague, because at least that bully is picking on them and not me, which then further fosters this sense of isolation and the person feeling alone and carved out of the herd, so to speak. Okay, so let's just do a little bit of Psychology 101, because I am offering to you the explanation that bullying behavior is really the behavior of a narcissist. And my definition of a bully is a narcissist with a license when they are in healthcare. So when we talk about Psychology 101, it's important to understand there are two big buckets of understanding psychological behavior. There is the first bucket of psychosis. Now, those folks who are struggling with psychosis are not anchored to reality in this world. They hear voices we don't hear, they see things we don't see, and there is obviously a struggle for them to act or function or live independently in the world. Then there are those people who are neurotic. So help me, give me an example of what a neurotic person looks like, or acts like. And chronically, actually what I'm going to say to you is take a look around the room, because that's most of us. Most of us are neurotic. And we all have a certain degree of neurosis, and based on our personalities and our individual struggles, the neurosis sometimes has us or we have it. So it can be part of your personality, part of your charm. If you're a procrastinator, if you're compulsive about getting, every T crossed and every dotted I, it's a form of neurosis, and it kind of gives us our personality. And sometimes we struggle too much, not because we aren't anchored to reality, but because we are so very anchored to reality, and we tend to torment ourselves. The thing to understand about narcissists is that they are not crazy. It's not a form of psychosis. It is a hyper form of neurosis, and it comes under the subcategory of personality disorders. So our colleagues in the American Psychiatric Association have given us a little bit of an outline to describe this personality disorder. They have an exaggerated sense of self-importance. They believe they are special. And the thing is, in the workplace, they want you to believe that they're special too. They expect recognition even though they haven't done anything to warrant it. They believe they are superior, and in doing so, should only deal with people who they believe are in a superior position, which gives us a little bit of insight into why narcissist bullies always leapfrog the chain of command. It's one of the assessment factors that when we look at trying to determine if someone's engaging in a bullying behavior or chronically uncivil behavior, the tendency or the propensity to leapfrog authority, leapfrog the assistant manager, leapfrog the manager and go directly to the director and or administration is a common behavior of a narcissistic bully, because they feel they're so important. And if you were important enough, you wouldn't be middle anything. What I have to say and what I have to offer can only fall on the ears of the high and the mighty. Therefore, get out of my way. I'm going to administration. They require constant admiration. They have a sense of entitlement, not even based on seniority. They just feel because they're so special, they should get whatever they feel they should get. They are unable or unwilling to recognize the feelings of others. And in many of the things that you will read about narcissists, there's a reference to they seem to miss the empathy gene, that they don't have the ability to connect with another person on an authentic level. They're usually envious of others, but they think people are envious of them. And do we have to say that they behave in an arrogant manner? Well, of course they do. All of this is based in a fragile self-esteem. They need constant attention. They're usually fishing for compliments. They expect other people to defer to them. In other words, if you are a nurse manager or a department director, and you're starting a new initiative, and you've done a lot of work around this new initiative, if the narcissist bully in your unit hasn't been included in the planning and the rollout of that program, they will feel slighted. And in that sense of feeling insulted, they will do whatever they can to undermine that initiative and sabotage it. They nag, oh my God, do they nag. And if they want something, they're constantly trying to remind you, I need this, you do this, we need to do this now. It's just constantly in your face nagging. They're greedy. They just don't want their fair share of, time to go to conferences or time for, personal time off. They want all of it. And if they are, and they often are, in positions of authority, meaning that they are usually in a preceptor role or maybe a charge role, because these folks are usually very skilled and very smart. So they do a good job in the sense of the operationalizing of a unit, but they abuse that power, so that, we need to talk about putting our bullies in positions where they can be abusive, and in some ways empowering them to be abusive. So people with narcissistic personalities are just dismissive. If you've got a complaint or a problem, it's like, take it someplace else, because quite frankly, it's not important to me. They're arrogant, they're disdainful, they're patronizing, they can be extremely insulting to the person being targeted. But to the person in authority, they don't want to remember this is a shadow behavior. They will act in a manner that almost just like butter wouldn't melt. So here is the secret. of a secret weapon of a narcissist is, number one, they are very smart and highly skilled. And that is their stock in trade. They play upon the fact that they are smart, and they play upon the fact that they are skilled in such a way that they will remind you, you really don't want to get rid of me, because after all, who's going to do this for you when I'm gone? Who's going to orient all the newbies? Who's going to be in charge, when you need a charge person? And you hesitate on acting appropriately as a leader in doing the due diligence of discipline, or at least coaching this person, because after all, you're going to need them. And that is part of our problem here. They engage in manipulative communication techniques. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Here's the unsettling piece. Narcissists have predator qualities, meaning that they are, by virtue of the term, usually attractive. They usually have very compelling eyes and very compelling smiles, and they kind of draw you in to begin with and start to, develop a relationship with you, when actually what they're trying to do is not develop a relationship with you, but get a sense as whether or not you will be useful to them. Narcissists don't have relationships the way those of us who are not narcissists have relationships. They're not looking for an authentic connection. They're not looking for a soulmate. They're not looking for even a collegial relationship. They are looking for people who will be useful to them personally or in their career. And they are charming. And when you're trying to do due diligence here with any kind of progressive discipline, they will promise you the moon. They will swear in a stack of Bibles that, I've seen the light. They will tell you exactly what you want to hear and never, ever deliver on that promise. So one of the dysfunctional forms of communication that narcissist bullies use is called gaslighting. And it's a reference from an old movie with Ingrid Bergman. And really what it talks about, and these are some of the phrases that you might hear when someone's trying to gaslight you, keeping in mind that gaslighting is intentionally twisting your understanding of your reality. So it's trying to make the person engaging in gaslighting is trying to make you and others think you're crazy, you're the problem. So it sounds like, gee, I don't know what your problem is. I think you're overreacting. Calm down, calm down. Or that's just crazy. You need help. I think you need professional help. Or, you're getting upset over nothing. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Why are you so defensive? This has nothing to do with me. This is all your fault. Or you have a really overactive imagination. I don't know what you're talking about. I was just trying to help. So there is a plausible deniability to their explanations when you call them out on their behavior. So gaslighting, confusing and confounding everything so that it seems as though you're the person with the problem, is their number one form of communication. And I will say again, the number one reason why you do not want to try to roll out an action plan about a narcissistic bully without the assistance of upper leadership, administration, and human resources, because they will confuse and confound the situation to make it look like it's you and not them. Some other dysfunctional communication here. Again, I was only joking. I didn't do that. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know why you're lying about me. I've been here for years. I've been in charge. I take care of the new hires. You're the one with the issue, not me. And you can just hear the echoes of these gaslighting phrases, these phrases of plausible deniability that, allows them to get away with this behavior and make the person who's the victim and the actual target look ridiculous. So, no one gets more upset than a narcissist when they're accused of something they definitely did. So that is another hallmark thing, which you'll find is someone who's chronically uncivil will retreat. Someone who's chronically uncivil, will go off and they will, fume, and fester. Someone who's a narcissist, when you call them out on behavior that they know they're guilty for, they will overreact, act out, scream and shout, I'm going to, take this, to administration, and they do. So there is a real true acting out to that behavior, as opposed to someone who is uncivil, who will go off in the corner and sulk, so to speak. So again, you need to be aware of how this behavior manifests. There's going to be gaslighting. It's going to be projecting. It's you, it's not me. Guilt tripping, silent treatments, negative humor, acting as though they are the victim. And really, putting themselves in situations that people almost want to, what they're trying to do actually is trigger your caregiver mode or your caregiver gene, so that in their victimhood, you want to get in there and try to rescue them, and you're actually only enabling this behavior. So when we talk about the impact of bullying behavior, we're going to talk about the impact on the target and then the impact on the organization. If you've ever been targeted by a bully, I am so sorry, but you certainly can relate to what I'm about to share. It takes a physical toll on you, okay? There is clearly chronic stress issues that develop: sleeplessness, irritable bowel, perhaps ergonomic injuries. The psychological stress causes you to have anxiety, anger. You start really, getting very, very nervous about going to work at all, or hoping to God when you get to work, so-and-so isn't going to be there. You tend to lose trust in the people that are there to have oversight about creating a healthy work environment, so that, if you escalate this to a middle manager, they may or may not believe you. If you escalate this up to your director, perhaps they believe you, but they may not know how to actually effectively intervene on your behalf. So there's a loss of trust. And in some cases, there's actually, the managers actually go to the target and say, oh, well, they've had a tough life, the dog died, or, this happened. And they're almost justifying the bad behavior of the person doing the bullying. And they want the target to be more compassionate and empathetic of the bully. I know it sounds crazy, but this is truthful. And then, of course, the inevitable isolation, where, the person being targeted then feels as though they can't win on the unit. They don't take a break with anybody. They don't want to be around anyone. They start to become robotic in their care. They give good care, but they don't engage in anything. And as soon as the shift is over, they're gone. Now, on the organization, you can imagine a toll on productivity, loss of job satisfaction, the loss of employee engagement. People lose commitment to their organizations. The organization obviously doesn't care about me. Why should I care about them? And then you have the inevitable problems with retention. And then the word goes out on the street, and you're going to get really in trouble with recruitment, because, if organizations have real, reputations out there for, they're a group of great people, but boy, are there a bunch of bullies and narcissists there, well, then you're going to have some retention, or rather recruitment issues as well. And of course, you're going to be bleeding very, very valuable dollars that you could be using for much more important things. And then here is where the rubber meets the road. The evidence is astounding that when you're not dealing effectively with disruptive behavior in the workplace, the incidence of error goes sky high, and then that leaves you with second victim syndrome, which really is, a group of caregivers that are trying to figure out, they're remorseful for making an error, but they also know that it was almost inevitable that an error was going to be made because this person is so disruptive. So, is bullying intended or unintended? And of course, the narcissist will, of course, tell you, this is not what I was trying to do. You misunderstood me. You're blowing this out of proportion, blah, blah, blah. But we have evidence here with the work of Lewis in 2006 that shows that, that's not the case, that bullying is actually intended. In fact, there was a group of students that they were studying who were being bullied and didn't say anything about it, because they thought it was rites of passage. Like, this is what you had to navigate successfully in order to be part of the unit. Extraordinary. The Joint Commission in 2016 made it very clear. They declared that bullying is a behavior that is, number one, aggressive, number two, intentional, and number two, frequent. And we need to be doing very effective programs to address it. So, where we go wrong. And again, we go wrong because we are professional caregivers, which means that we want to care for everyone. And if we're overusing our caregiver gene, we overuse it in a way that we want to fix everything. We want to make everybody happy. We want to be understanding. We want to be accommodating. And that is all a recipe for we are now becoming enabling, which is the dark side of caregiving. So you have to be very careful, whether you are a staff person or you are in a leadership role or an educator role, that you don't overuse your caregiver gene in dealing with people who are abusive and just trying to explain their behavior. There is no reason why we have to act like the public relations person for this person. So how many of you are guilty of this? I know I am. Here comes Phyllis, and she's going to be a new person in the unit. And I say, Phyllis, I'm going to put you with Mary. Keep your head down and your mouth closed. You know, she can be a handful, but you're going to get a great orientation because she's very smart and very skilled. We've all done this. We've condoned the disruptive behavior and almost made it a trade-off, an acceptable trade-off for someone doing their, precepting job properly. Think about that. And if you're guilty of it, as I was, stop doing it. Because what's really important is that when someone shows you their true colors, don't try to repaint them. Don't try to explain it as they've had a hard life, somebody got killed, and they never fully grieved. And we all have compassion for circumstances around people's lives, but that doesn't give permission to be vile towards their work colleagues. That does not give them permission to make people feel humiliated and abusive, or certainly get people fearing to come to work because of what they may have to endure. All right, it stops there. We have compassion for you, but it doesn't give you permission to act out towards others. So let's just understand a little bit here about the difference between someone who is chronically uncivil and someone who engages in bullying behavior. So on the left, we have bullying behavior. So for a bully, the behavior leaves the target feeling threatened, humiliated, and vulnerable. Well, the answer is yes. For someone who's chronically uncivil, the answer to that same question is no. And these are some of the key assessment points you want to be able to have ready for yourself, and also be able to go to speak to your administration and your human resources and say, these are the behaviors that I'm seeing, and I know that they are consistent with narcissistic bullying behavior. Does the bully have insight into what they do, and do they care about their effect on others? The answer here is no. All right. Does the person who's chronically uncivil have insight or care? Well, some do, but they need assistance being shown the light, because remember, the person who's chronically uncivil is struggling with low emotional intelligence. When you ask a bully to sustain their pledge or their promise to change their ways and act more civilly, are they able to sustain that? The answer is no. And the reason for that is there's no commitment to sustaining anything, any sort of improvement, because they feel they're perfect anyway, and they're giving you lip service when they tell you, yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, I'll stop doing that. Yeah, oh, thanks for that input. Okay, I'll take that to heart. I won't be doing that anymore. Nonsense. They are not listening to you at all. They're trying to get out of an awkward moment and just be charming and tell you what you want to hear so that they can carry on. You'll turn the other way and they'll re-engage in that same behavior. If you are going to invest the time and money it takes to work with someone who's chronically uncivil, and you put a program in place of emotional intelligence training and just-in-time coaching and close management, can they sustain their commitment to change? And the answer is yes. It will take time and money and investment of resources, but they will sustain that commitment. Will bullies follow the chain of command? No, they will leapfrog. Will people who are chronically uncivil follow the chain of command? Most times they do. Will bullies engage in disruptive or dysfunctional communication? Always. Okay. Will people who are chronically uncivil engage in gaslighting or confusing communication? Not as a go-to thing. They actually will probably they may deny what's happening, but then they will kind of fess up. Are bullies condescending? Will they mimic people, mock people, use name-calling techniques? Yes. Will that be someone who's chronically uncivil? No. And then finally, and very, very importantly, will a bully seek revenge? And the answer is, unfortunately, Yes. And this is another reason why you do not want to take them on yourself. The person who is uncivil will potentially seek revenge, but probably in a more self-sabotaging manner. Those of us who are not narcissistic certainly feel disappointed when we get negative feedback. But narcissists get negative feedback and they feel the need they feel as though they've been exposed, which means then that they have to, and they feel threatened, which means that they have to do something to take you out so that you are no longer a threat. And they will commit themselves to seeking revenge, which is, again, one of the reasons why you have to engage administration and human resources before you take on this person, so that everybody understands the behaviors that are about to show up and the reasoning behind those behaviors, so that your career doesn't go into jeopardy while you're trying to do your job. So when we talk about, the cycle of workplace bullying, it's very, very descriptive and familiar to those of us who have either studied child abuse syndrome, elder abuse syndrome, and domestic violence. It starts with an episode of bullying, and then the person is called out on that, and they can give you all sorts of remorse. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. They're over solicitous, they make promises, they're super nice. And then over time, they start to become more irritable. People start to make accommodations around them, hoping to God they're never going to blow again. And then certainly there's another episode of bullying. And this is the reason why bullying behavior, let's just say the promise to correct or self-correct bullying behavior cannot be sustained. This is a cycle that goes on and on and on, and it does not stop. However, if you're working with someone who's chronically uncivil, you may have the uncivil behavior, you may put some emotional intelligence training in there around self-awareness and self-management. They start to learn new lifestyles, and then unfortunately, as they take a few steps towards being less uncivil and more of a positive influence on the unit, inevitably they're going to make a mistake and go down 1 or 2 steps, but they can self-correct at that point. You refresh some training, and then they can go back up. It is a forward progressive form of improvement, absolutely visible improvement over time with someone who is chronically uncivil and now is learning how to live in the world in a more civil manner, and they can sustain that training. Not so with a bully. Now, some of the reasons why we're dealing with so much incivility is we have to get a handle on, and I know that the workplace right now is so intense. I've never known it to be anything other than intense, but I'm not going to blow smoke at you and say the last 2 years just haven't been awful. But we still have to be able to, those of us in leadership positions, whether they're administrative or education, have to act and lead in a manner that is constructive and visible and action oriented. We cannot have laissez-faire leadership. Laissez-faire leadership allows everybody to just do what they want to do. So some examples of workplace incivility, is, not listening or interrupting others when they're speaking, chronically dysfunctional systems and infrastructures, where you're trying to have a better collaboration with some of your interprofessional colleagues, maybe on the way the labs are done or the meds come up from pharmacy. And, everybody's just, kind of blaming each other. Disruptive meetings, people who act inappropriately, anybody who engages in rumor mongering. All of a sudden somebody's taking credit for a work that perhaps they participated in, but it wasn't a sole effort, and they forget to include the other people in the team. Overruling decisions, they're kind of making these global decisions without including the team. You have to understand that if you want a civil workplace, civility equals respect. And that if you're thinking, well, how can I do this in a civil manner? The word you want to ask for is, how can I do this in a respectful manner? And if you keep your eye on the respectful goal, civility, of course, will naturally follow. Other forms, if you're a leader, being invisible or inaccessible, or people are trying to make meetings with you and you're chronically, rescheduling them or saying, you got called away. One of the things that I was guilty of for a long time was going to my go-to people, you know, those 2 or 3 people on the unit that will always do a little overtime, always do a little more. And in always going to them, it's abusive, and you're not necessarily holding other people accountable for their fair share of carrying the, you know, the buckets of water that the whole unit has to carry. And the reason we do that is not just because they're the best at it, it's just they give us the least pushback, so it makes our job easier. Let's own it. Okay, so we don't want to struggle, we just want to delegate, and we delegate to the person we know what's going to do it. That is not transformational leadership. You need to delegate according to whatever needs to be done in a very fair and non-capricious manner. So, you know, what we know now, especially and definitely after the pandemic, is that, you know, people leave jobs because of their leaders. You know, usually, you know, there's some geographical locations, somebody's spouse got transferred, I have to move back because my parents are frail and elderly. There are always, you know, 5–15% of reasons that go according to personal issues like that. But for the most part, you know, people, yes, will leave organizations for promotions and other opportunities, but by and large, people leave dysfunctional teams and dysfunctional leaders. And if we're really going to get our arms around this, we have to be open and honest about addressing these things. So, what does civility look like? Well, it looks like coming to work and feeling valued. It looks like creating a healthiest work environment so that you can actually put your heart and mind around the vision and the mission of the organization and say, yes, I'd like to be part of something greater than myself. Civility looks like clear, very precise, accurate information and communication that's not just one shot and done. You know, you might send out an email, you might send out a, you know, a newsletter, you might text, you might use Microsoft Teams, but you make sure that everybody has the same communication and information. The reputation of the organization or that particular department is you want to work there. So there's competition to come and join, you know, Tooth South's team. We know the people that work there, and boy, if you can get a job there, you're going to be pretty, you know, pretty content. There's dynamic thinking. You're engaging your staff and you are empowering your staff to do their problem solving, to be innovative, and in turn, then be high performers. So again, what does, you know, civility look like? Well, continual communication, resolution of conflict, not turning your back on it, having stress management interventions, perhaps embedding team steps into your communication culture, and certainly making sure that you are embedding the code of conduct in everything you do as far as it applies to disruptive behavior. So, you know, why is it important that we do this? Because the evidence is undeniable. You know, there is a loss of productivity. Incivility absolutely is contagious, and it will, you know, start to really not just impact the unit, but the interprofessional team, and it will find its way to patients and their families. And then, of course, all of your metrics around patient satisfaction and staff engagement scores really begin to tank. It interferes with teamwork and sound communication, and we know that that is the foundation of safety for our patients in the organization. It makes it much more difficult to retain good talent. Good talent is not going to put up with a disruptive, unaddressed disruptive behaviors or an unhealthy work environment for long. Interferes with our ability to be civil and to make genuine connections with our patients. So again, all of your metrics around patient satisfaction begins to tank. So what I really want to offer you here is an understanding about the collaboration needed between administration, human resources, and labor, if labor is involved, to create a true zero tolerance for a culture of bullying. So this is where we need to engage and get as much information from our human resource colleagues as we possibly can. I love this concept, and this is a concept that comes out of Hutchinson, Wilkes, Jackson, and Vickers that was published in 2010. And their understanding and what their recommendation is let's not just call it disruptive behavior, let's call bullying organizational defiance. because we know the consequences of this bullying behavior impacts patients. And if the mission and value of the organization is to give the best, safe, world-class care to patients, and you are engaging in behavior that will undermine that, well, that's organizational defiance. And it really puts it in terms of, the importance and the seriousness of disruptive behavior. We have all sorts of input from all the different professional organizations. Certainly the Joint Commission says that you've got to be careful because, and you have to be visible as a leader, because a lot of clinicians choose to keep quiet and turn a blind eye. And they're doing that again because they don't want to be the target of the bully. What we know is that there's a lot of bullying and incivility. But we also know that it's underreported in an unbelievable way. So, there's got to be a collaboration, which means that here are some of my suggestions. I think that we have to make reporting the number of complaints about bullying, incivility, disruptive behavior part of our pathway to excellence or part of our magnet journey. Because then it can, when you have this many complaints, then something is undermining, what you're trying to say about your organization, and clearly we need to take a deeper dive. All incidents of disruptive behavior need to be escalated to human resources. Other things is that, I've used over the years, I have learned to use some behavioral questions on interviews, especially for leadership positions, that I think are a little telling. One of the things that I do is that if someone is coming to interview for me for a leadership position, I make them wait a little bit. So they may have a 10 a.m. appointment. I talk to my secretary, and I'm going to, delay that interview maybe 15, 20 minutes. Please make sure so-and-so is comfortable. I offer them coffee, water, the restroom, a place where they can recharge their phone, and so on. And then I bring them in with all sorts of apologies about, I'm very sorry, something last minute happened. The person who is gracious and who you want on your team will probably say to you, that is just fine. I came ready to spend as much time as necessary here today. In fact, if you're still super busy, I can go get lunch and come back in the afternoon if that is more, if that's easier for you, as long as we do the interview today. That's the person you want on your team. The person who comes into your office after you made them wait with half an attitude is telling you exactly where they're going to be. They are insulted because they are so important. How could you possibly be this disrespectful to me? And they have no compassion for circumstances around it. That's the person you want to make sure you put them on the bottom of the pile. The other thing is, I ask people right out loud, do you think you're a narcissist? Believe it or not, and this is hard to believe, people who are narcissists will say, yeah, I am. Incredible as it sounds, but they're so excited about being a narcissist that they actually will say something like that. I believe in the 6-month probation. I don't believe in the 3-month probation after you agree to employ someone. I think those of us who have been in personal relationships knows that anybody can be on their best behavior for 3 months, but if they're still on their good behavior 6 months later, you probably want to get engaged. It's after the 3-month mark, if they start to become, a little less than wonderful, maybe move on. All right. And I think one of the key things is that we have to do away with our mentality of hiring for the job, meaning, can you do the job? Tell me your experience, tell me your skills. I can teach you how to do the job. I want to hire you for personality, character, and temperament. I want to hire you for your ability to work in a collegial manner. I want to hire you for your thoughts and insights around teamwork. The rest I can teach you. So when we are, again, talking about, the collaboration that it takes, you have to have policies and procedures with teeth. You can't just have policies and procedures on paper. You have to have a code of conduct that is living and breathing. There has to be something about your anti-disruptive behavior, anti-incivility and bullying behavior that has psychological safety around it to protect those that are going to escalate and say we have a problem. Your policies and procedures definitely have to have a no retaliation clause, meaning that if I make a complaint about someone and that someone then of course is spoken to, if they retaliate towards me, which a bully will absolutely do, that is grounds for termination right then and there. End of story. So, we have a Bill of Rights, and I know we talk a lot about Patients' Bill of Rights, Family Bill of Rights, but nurses have a Bill of Rights as well. And I just want to show you 3 of the important things that are there. You have the right to practice in a manner that feeds your soul. You have the right to feel free, you have the right to freely and openly advocate for yourself, your patients, without fear of retribution. And you have the right to a work environment that is safe, not only for you, but for your patients. So when we are talking about creating a department, I'd like you as leaders or future leaders to stop using the word employees or staff in your head. And let's let go of it in our vocabulary. I think what's most important is that we create a sense of citizenship on our units or within our departments, so that, and we use that language so that when we are interviewing people to come and work in our workplace, it's not like, well, here's the role, or here's the position, or here's what I expect of a staff member, that you are really interviewing using the language around, here's what we expect from the citizens of our department. And when someone is engaging in behavior that is less than consistent with that, and you need to do some just-in-time coaching, you say to the person, well, that behavior is inconsistent with our expectations of citizenship on this department. So that we start to understand that if you want to work here, it's a right. And it's not just a right, it's a privilege. And that we expect everyone to have equal rights, and we expect everyone to be respected. And that there is more here than just a job and a paycheck. There is a team. We spend 1/3 of our lives together, and we're going to live together in a very civil manner. So we have to have appropriate de-escalation skills. And of course, I think Team Steps is a great process, and I think everybody should try to embed that into their department. But some of the things you want to make sure you do when you're trying to relate to a narcissist, one of the things you want to do is set boundaries, which of course they will try to break because boundaries are for other people, not for them. Avoid having, if you're going to put an action plan in place, you want to then minimize your contact with that person. And if you are putting an action plan in place, make sure you put in your action plan set times for when you are going to meet to discuss progress. Now, this person will nag you. I want to talk to you. Can't we just, because what they're trying to do is talk you out of your decision to actually hold them accountable. They will find you in the cafeteria, find you in the parking lot. I mean, I have walked into more bathrooms trying to get away from, these folks, because I'm not discussing this. And the language you need to use, and you have to have some cognitive rehearsal around what you're going to say in dicey moments so that you remain civil, is that in your action plan, we have certain dates when we're going to meet, and we're going to stick to the plan. Have a nice day, and then walk away. What you don't want to do is underestimate the power of a narcissist. Again, please do not try to tackle these folks on your own. You don't want to try to beat them at their own game. You don't want to, take them at face value. They will, again, try to tell you exactly what you want to hear. And here's the thing that is the most difficult for those of us who have chosen professional caregiving as a way of life, is that there is no cure here. These folks are not changing. Narcissists are not changing. Someone who's chronically uncivil with low emotional intelligence can be taught emotional intelligence and do better. Narcissists do not have any clue or acknowledgement that there is anything wrong, so there's nothing to correct. So if you think you're going to fix a narcissist, you're really going to get yourself in a bucket of trouble. So I call these the DNRs, of working with a narcissist, and the 8-step pause. So let's face it, when you are confronting this, it's a very, very challenging situation, and it's going to give you some boot camp moments where you're going to be struggling to kind of maintain your composure. if you look at it from a different positive way, it's a way for you to really hone some really good, tough leadership skills. You know, you need to be physically aware of your body language. You need to be emotionally aware that you're not getting triggered. You need to have insight into your own reactions because perhaps you were bullied as a child and you may be overreacting or even underreacting to what's going on. So this is a time for you to grow your emotional intelligence as well. But the DNRs here are do not react, do not respond, and do not resuscitate. So you want to make sure that you have a, you're going to be stay poised. You're going to stay self-controlled when you're around these folks. You do not want to respond to any of their accusations because then they will use that against you. So there's a common one of you're always picking on me and you're always doing this. And the answer to that is, I'm very sorry you feel that way, and then walk away. That is not an invitation for a conversation. And then when all is said and done, don't engage, don't re-engage. Let this go. So again, we know from our Team STEPS colleagues that you can do the DESC acronym here. You can just, when you're trying to do some just-in-time coaching, to either for someone who's chronically uncivil or a bully, you describe the situation, express your concerns, suggest other options of which they on how they could behave or manage that situation, but be very clear about the consequences if they choose to keep engaging in the same disruptive behavior. What I want to point out to you is that this is a real good way to document as well, because your human resource professionals will always say, I don't want to hear about it, I want to read it on paper, where is the documentation? So you can just put describe, express, suggest, and consequences on a piece of paper, 3 or 4 bullet points under each heading, put the date on it, print it out, sign it, put it in the person's file, and you have just documented that just-in-time coaching, what was said and how you expressed and the consequences thereof. You can actually do this type of documentation in about 90 seconds, 2 minutes. So there really isn't an excuse if you use some of the tools that we already have about not documenting because it takes too long. No one's asking you to write War and Peace. The same thing is to be said for SFED. SFED model is what we use in school to give feedback to students. Self-assessment, feedback that is completely objective, encouragement, and then direction. Again, you could have a piece of paper, self-assessment, feedback, encouragement, and direction. Put a couple of bullet points under each heading about that particular conversation and what your expectations for improvement is. Print it out, sign it, date it, into the file it goes. Another 2 or 3 minutes and your documentation is done, and you will have a strong ally in human resources because they cannot do it if you're not going to provide the documentation. And then if you have someone who's chronic, and I mean you have them and we just have to get that pattern of chronic behavior down, you can use a spreadsheet. And you can do a spreadsheet, something similar to this. Is the bullying behavior directed towards a professional colleague, a leader, one of the support staffs? Was there a close encounter with a family member, perhaps a vendor? You put the date, the time, the incident, and you just keep a running anecdotal spreadsheet. And when you have to print this spreadsheet out and put it in front of human resources, trust me, it's going to take their breath away, but it's going to be the kind of documentation that will help them take this to the next level of action. So, you want to empower your staff to be able to do something if they see something. And we have to be mindful of the bystander effect. So that's, passive intolerance and ignoring behavior that we really should be intervening in. The thing is that we do know that if more people are observing an inappropriate behavior, then more likely nobody will do anything about it. It's a real social phenomenon. But you want to make sure that you have ways that the staff can say, wait just a second, and put a light on this shadowy behavior. So, we know this from our national patient safety goals, stop the line, something is not right. And it's one of the things that I offer you as a possible suggestion. Again, you're going to bring this up with human resources and administration, that, if you see somebody engaging in bullying behavior, everything stops. and we kind of just watch the behavior. You don't leave the person who's being targeted by themselves, and you stand up for what is right. And if you are witnessing something, then I hope you're able to find the courage and have the support to be able to write your that incident up and show it as evidence. When you are asked to write something like that, you don't have to write War and Peace. You just have to go with the 5 W's. Who was there, what happened, where happened, when did it happen, and who witnessed what. All right, again, our documentation doesn't have to go on for pages and pages. Who, what, where, when, and was there a witness? And even when you're doing your investigations, you can use the acronym LISTEN. You know, you lean into the situation. Don't avoid it. Don't make it the last thing you want to do at the end of the day. Lean in. Treat it like a sharps injury. Get busy. Act on it right away for the safety of the person. Okay? I is for insight into the goal. Don't try to fix anything. All you're doing is collecting facts at this particular time. Don't try to solve or you know, put a solution to the problem right now. That's not your focus. You're really just getting information as part of an investigation. Make sure you're not doing this alone, and that if you are interviewing someone, there's a scribe present. That could be someone from Human Resources who you want to engage early. And then if anybody asks, well, what do you think? You just say, I'm in an information seeking, you know, mode right now. I really don't have an opinion because I'm trying to get all the facts. So, you know, the thing is to ensure due diligence when you're doing progressive discipline. You, again, partnering with your human resource person, you know, is really the way to go. You want to make sure that you're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, especially if there is a bargaining agreement or human resource policies and procedures for how you should progressively work with someone. And then at the end of this, if you feel you're at a situation or a position where, you know, we're coming to the end of our rope with this person, this has gone on for quite a long time, but you're not sure you have all the evidence necessary to get that person to suspension or termination, you can employ something that comes from the legal field, and it's called a red team. And what you do is you put your evidence in front of people who are not really familiar with the situation, and you present it as if you were presenting this to a mediation board. And that red team can then decide whether or not you really have a case, or are you missing pieces, so that when you actually go to enact an action plan of suspension and or termination with this person, it's a solid case. So when you're doing your performance improvements, you want to be prepared. You've got to do your cognitive rehearsals. Performance improvement plan shouldn't be any more than 100 days. All right. If somebody can't improve in 100 days, they're not going to improve in 101. You want to make sure that you do good self-care, because once you start to enact a performance improvement plan, this person will try to wear you down. You want to be able to have a way of venting, whether that's through journaling or you have a dear friend or colleague or mentor, but you need to take good care of yourself if you are in the leadership position and you are now trying to enact this performance improvement plan with this person. Just keep in mind that the general public has very little tolerance for bullying and incivility. People are out there, and I don't need to tell you, you can just watch the 6 o'clock news. Everybody's got a phone and everybody's making a video. So you'd be surprised how many videos and pictures of incivility are being taken to administration to show that this nurse was inappropriate with this support person, or this physician was inappropriate with this person. And people are not turning a blind eye any longer, because the assumption is if you're going to be this disrespectful to each other, then my mother or father, who's your patient, doesn't have a chance of being treated in a civil manner. So again, we want to make a commitment to creating the healthiest, you know, work environment we possibly can. And really, I think the antidote to chronic incivility is the development of emotional intelligence in everyone. The antidote for bullying is to exit the person from the building, because there is no fixing them. So the American Association of Critical Care Nurses has given us these 6 pillars of a healthy work environment, and I would encourage each of you that are out there in a leadership position to lean in and understand these 6 pillars, and then do drill downs to see where your particular department is as far as communication, collaboration, decision making, authentic leadership, and so on. Do it in a collaborative manner with your staff so that you get inclusive engagement, and then really start to work an action plan that creates a unit or a department that everyone would be envious to work in. Because it's emotional intelligence that's the new secret sauce. We used to think that academic learning and skill was the recipe for success, and we know now that you have to have good academic preparation. Of course, you want to be skilled at what you do, but you need to have that emotional intelligence where you are aware of how you are and how you engage in the world, and you are also aware of how to work better in groups and in teams. That will give you the ultimate success in your life and in your profession. So creating a culture of incivility, again, as I said, it's been a problem for the 44 years that I've been practicing. So I put to you, if we're not going to talk about it and do something about it now, when are we going to do it? And I leave you with this: the highest courage is to dare to be yourself in the face of adversity, choosing right over wrong, ethics over convenience, and truth over popularity. It's not easy to lead at all. These are the choices that measure your life. Travel the path of integrity without looking back, for there is never a wrong time to do the right thing. And if there's ever been a time to create a healthy work environment for the courageous people who work in healthcare, this day has come. Thank you so much for your attention. It's been a pleasure to present this to you. I'm going to put it back to you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Phyllis, for your presentation today. I learned a great deal, and I'm sure that our audience did as well. We do have a few questions that have come in, and Phyllis, I will get those to you, but we have run out of time, and we try to keep everything as contained as we can, just to make sure that these professionals that we work with can get back to doing what they do the best. So I will send those questions to you. So audience, please keep in mind, Phyllis's contact information is on the screen now, so you can take that down, and I will get the questions that you have asked to her. Thank you so much again, Phyllis, for a great presentation. I would like to encourage everyone to visit our sponsor, MFW Consultants to Professionals, to learn more about the services they provide to our industry. Please visit mfwconsultants.com. A quick reminder that you can obtain your certificate by completing today's post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed to you 1 hour after the end of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE hour, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We'll be back soon with another webinar. Please visit ortodaywebinars.live for more details and complimentary registration. Thank you again, Phyllis, and to our audience, have a fantastic afternoon.
My pleasure. Thank you.